here we are. Cool.
Much better. You're being hidden by the logo.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what Danny was asking. I thought he was asking who created the logo, but he said who's behind the logo. Now I get it.
Oh, okay. Well,
Anna was literally behind the curtain.
But my voice was there. Cool. So please feel free to ask your questions. In the meantime, let's bring up a question, and whoever wants to answer it, feel free to answer it. Please don't go all at once, and please do not stay silent either. So here's the first question, and the most difficult. What is DevRel?
The way to kick it off.
Yeah, remember how I said not to be silent?
Wow.
Otherwise I'll pick on people.
I think Sam Julien should take this. Don't you have an ebook or something, Sam?
I may or may not have written some things on this topic that I might be able to talk about. My definition of DevRel is that the main task of DevRel is to build relationships with users and potential users of a product, mediate between them and the company, and advocate for their best interest. So we're the neutral go-between between a software company and developers.
But in the end, it's all about relationships, right, Sam?
Indeed.
It sounds a little bit too clinical, I think, if we leave it there. I think the best part of this job is just getting to build relationships with not just people but communities. And I think that's at the heart of DevRel.
And that's the cool thing for us. I think that like all of us naturally enjoy like going to conferences, going to meetups, spending time with people, learning from people, teaching people. And that's how you build those relationships, is really just like showing up. And it's not if you're doing the right things, you don't really have to try hard. Like it comes natural. So we are hopefully the most natural, genuine face to the developer for Auth0 in this case, but just developer advocates in general for whatever company or product or thing that they represent.
Cool. And now I'm going to bring up a totally random question, but let's do it. Which cake are you all getting for Christmas?
Thank you, Arpan, for that insightful question.
I'm going to go total British here, and I'm going to say mince pie.
Nice.
Wait, what is mince pie?
Is it like a mince pie thing?
No, it's actually sweet. I'm going to send you all some mince pies so you can try them.
Thank you.
Will they hold up?
What?
Will they hold up if you ship them across the Atlantic?
The thing is, I need to get them shipped from the UK to all around. Because I got mine shipped from the UK. You can't get them in Spain.
Like a vacuum seal. They'd probably still be good.
Or maybe it's just an excuse to do Christmas in the UK next year. Like offsite.
I'm
Christmas.
Always for that.
Yes.
Yeah. I will not be getting a fruit cake. I don't know what kind of cake I will get, but it will not be a fruit cake. I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, cake. I don't think cake is a tradition in my family, but what we do have as a tradition is it's called Miss Martin's candy, and I don't think there's a recipe online, so I wouldn't bother searching for it. But it's something my grandma makes that's like caramely and salty, and it's delicious. So that's what we'll be enjoying for dessert.
Yeah, cake wasn't a tradition in my family either. We do pies, so very similar to like a Thanksgiving thing. So pecan pies and apple pies, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're usually stuffed by the time it's dessert time, so I don't really remember what we eat for dessert at Christmas.
You just pass out right after the main course.
Yeah.
And all the candy in your stocking.
Yeah. Well, I recommend eating cake for breakfast, so then you won't be stuffed.
Make sure you have room.
I do want to try figgy pudding because it's in all the Christmas songs and it sounds interesting.
True.
That's a good point. Okay, we're going to get back on topic to Dev Advocacy?
Sorry, Arpan.
And what is the worst thing about being a dev advocate?
I think sometimes it's just knowing what's the most important, and that can change like every day. But like one of the big troubles we have is metrics. Like how do you tangibly track like impact or those relationships, right? Like they're pretty arbitrary things, and you can have numbers about like how many people you talk to or how many people awesomely show up for a live stream, that sort of stuff. But like it's hard to, based on those numbers, you don't really know what impact that had or like what positive aspect of Auth0 you were able to show people that they hadn't seen before, or just those things are hard to know. Like sometimes how you're doing at your job, like are you having the impact that you should? I don't know, because it's kind of hard to track sometimes.
I think being in the middle of a few teams is also sometimes a bit difficult. Like you're not a part of the engineering team, and you're maybe not a full-time marketing person, and you're not doing PR all the time. So you're doing a little bit of all of those things, but you're not a full one of those things. So that might be difficult as well.
Yeah.
I think the worst part is you're often, and not all the time, but certainly my experience, you are always remote from your teammates. And so not getting to just sit next to your teammates who, you know, hopefully eventually are friends can get difficult to be able to stay connected, and certainly something we're constantly challenged with on this team.
For me, I think the hardest part is just logistical. Just having there's always so many channels of communication. There's Slack, 15 different Discord servers, Twitter, conference live streams, and so just trying to wrangle all of those into a cohesive system to be able to keep in touch with people and answer questions and things like that, I find pretty challenging.
Yeah, I'm picking back off of James. This is my first year doing DevRel full time, and I found just like figuring out what's the best use of my time has been the struggle. Like trying to figure out like should I do A, B, or C, and which one's gonna be the best in the long term and the best effects. That's kind of been like on my mind of what should I do.
Yeah, for me, it's the amount of like Google Sheets I've been creating lately. It's something you don't expect from this job, but it happens. Okay, so another question. What do you think the most important thing is regarding someone who may be the first developer advocate at their company? Ooh, tough.
I've heard this one before. It's not easy. I think the yeah. Why don't you go, James?
Oh, I was like kind of the same thing I just said, but times infinity, right? Like there's no, and maybe that's a good thing too. But like, how do you know if you're successful if you don't have anything to compare to, right? Like you're starting from scratch, and in some ways, maybe it takes off some of the pressure. But the most important thing I think is still just activities. It's just being out there, and it like in a virtual world. And Devin, I know you do a lot of this stuff, is articles and videos and talking on Twitter and being part of the communities and Slack and stuff. Like just being out there for people's awareness, I think that's just how you get started. And then you try to be more efficient at the things that you do eventually, but just getting started, I think, and being active is the most important thing to start.
I do think it's important when you're doing this activity by yourself for a company to also prioritize making sure the company understands what DevRel is. And that can take a bit of data mining, because you're not going to have the kind of scale data that you would have if you had a team doing it. So you need to kind of start with whatever data you can get. And so I find that some of the best data to get early on is qualitative data. So surveying developers, doing testing with developers, getting their direct feedback on the product and APIs, and starting to categorize that in a spreadsheet or whatever is a good way to show the business the value in interacting with developers. So I think that's at least some practical advice there.
Cool. That brings us on to our next question, which is, how do you measure success in DevRel? Success in terms of the product you are advocating? I think this is something we struggle with every single day.
Yeah, I like to say that we have to measure impact, and we do that in quantitative ways and qualitative ways. Because I think one thing with DevRel that's difficult is if you were to try to only measure it in terms of quantitative numbers like attendance at conferences, you might not get the entire picture. They're very important numbers, followers, viewers, attendees, things like that. And they tell you a piece of the story, but they don't tell you the entire story. You could speak at a very small event that actually ends up having a really high impact due to the audience or how it was promoted or things like that. So we try to look at things like community sentiment and whether we're influencing the space, how open source projects are interacting with us. So there's a lot of different ways that we try to measure this. Jarod is the king of the data, so he'll probably have more to say about that, but that's the broad picture of it.
I've said a lot. I want to hear someone else's take on this.
Well, one thing I wanted to say, that one thing I've learned about working in DevRel is the importance of both qualitative and quantitative. Not to get wrapped up on, like, as you said, Sam, like I only had a certain amount of people on my live stream, and that being the only measure of success. I think if you have that mentality, then it'll bring you down a little bit. But to focus on both and having a balance of both of those is equally as important than focusing on just like a numbers game.
Sometimes, like for people on a stream, even if you have a couple, like the impact or the relationship that you build with that one or two people is like exponentially more than you could get out of like less engagement, less impact in a stream with 30 people, right? So
Quality
that like
over quantity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like we probably as a team may not do as good of a job of highlighting those individual moments. Like I know Anna sent one in our internal chat recently of like a comment, I forget exactly what it was, that was just positive about the impact, I think, of Avocado Labs. And like having those sort of things helps like shape this package. Like it's not just numbers. There's actually like there's people associated to it and there's feelings associated to it. And I like one product that really got me early on is Sanity, that a lot of people have probably heard me talk about as a headless CMS. And because of me asking a question on Twitter, them responding to me, a couple people DMing me on Twitter, and then coming into live streams in the chat, and then joining me on a live stream. Like anytime somebody's like headless CMS, I'm like Sanity, right? Because I had like that genuine engagement with them. So if you're able to have that level of impact and relationship with one person, they might do the same thing with 50 other people over the course of their time. So that's kind of how you like scale things out. And those things are easy to get overlooked because they're not big numbers, but they are potentially really impactful.
I do think it's important as a team to define what success is first as your team. So always start with developer advocates defining their own success. And if that rolls up nicely into what the company needs, great. If not, make a case to the business to why this is important to developers and why it's going to help developers use your product or tool. I think that is, it's important for this data to start in the team and not start with like a big business metric.
So thank you, Siva, for that question. A big shout out to you because you're one of our Auth0 ambassadors. So thank you so much for being on board with us and being here today. And actually, the next question I kind of want all of us to reply to because it's a question that I think each of us have a different answer to because we have our own projects and we have our own initiatives. So if we go one by one, I'm going to start. Let's start on my right, James.
Can we like hold on, do that again? Let me like pass me the proverbial ball and I'm gonna grab it. All right, and then I will pass over to Sam. This will be a lot. Oh, so I guess Sam will have to go down to anyway, y'all figure it out. But yeah, I think to the original point, it changes every day, really. And that's one of the cool things I think for me. Like it can potentially be one of the downsides. I think that Euro Sam, as we have affectionately referred to him, mentioned of just like sometimes you're doing this, sometimes you're doing that, and it's kind of all over the place. So a lot of demos, like writing code for smaller demos. There's a question I think we'll talk about more of like actually participating in like production projects. I don't do as much of that myself, although that's something I would like to spend a little bit more time doing. I do a lot of streaming and video content myself, so I spend a lot of time there. Recently, I've also had conversations with external companies of like, how do we kind of coordinate some of our collaboration efforts into something tangible? So having calls and reviewing blog posts and outlines and things like that. So it can be a little bit all over the place, but I guess like video content, streaming, and some of the collaboration stuff is 3, I guess, big ones for me. And then I'm going with this way. So there it is. Nailed it.
Nailed it. Yeah, my day is a little bit different because I do spend some time coding. I think most of this team, because we also maintain a bunch of open source projects, and we have open source tools like jwt.io. So I do spend a lot of time maintaining those tools, those open source libraries, sometimes adding new features. So that's what I usually get started with in the morning, because my mornings are usually quite easy because of the time differences between Europe and the US. So as the day progresses, my meetings get more and more, especially by the time the US is awake and I'm almost falling asleep. We usually have the calls with the team. And then during the day, I also go back and forth between Anna and myself, because we're both in Europe and we like to work on things together, things like Avocado, for example. And then it's up to Jarod.
Yeah. So I am. Are we supposed to like tap out? Oh yeah, there we go. That way. So as I am a manager, so on the team, my role is really just in helping all of these folks do their job. So my day is really about unblocking them with whatever they need. I guess the only productive work I get done at this point is about every week I'm reporting on something. So last week I was doing the content highlights of what we shipped in November, and that was fun. But I'm often doing like a report on how what amazing work is going on in the community, or I'm helping these folks. So it's pretty like Anna's point. There's a lot of Google spreadsheets involved, which I would not recommend anyone have their life be too much in Google spreadsheets. So with that, to Sam.
This way.
Yeah, there we go.
So yeah, my day-to-day has evolved a lot over the last year. I spend a lot of my time on the ambassadors program now. I spend quite a bit of time doing working on processes and systems for the ambassadors program, talking to ambassadors, helping them with content ideas, training ambassadors, just working to build and scale that program. It's sort of my baby at this point. But then I also still do talks and podcasts and things like that. So I'll spend a lot of time tweaking presentations and applying to conferences and speaking at virtual events and things like that. And then also working on some of the Zero Index developer newsletter I work on. So that's another thing. We ship that out to about 30,000 developers a month. So I curate the content for that and work on shipping that and all of that stuff. So a lot of my job now is very strategy and process oriented and less about content right now, but it's definitely an evolving process. Let's see, Kristy, I'd go this way. Yeah.
Oh, cool. I got it. We live close together, so we're pretty coordinated. We're both in the same state.
It's easy for us.
All right. So I am a project manager here, and I actually am not a developer, but my role is to help all of these folks here with processes that are slowing us down. So coordinating really anything from making the ambassador program more streamlined and so that all of our developer advocates can spend their time advocating, building relationships, creating great content for you all to enjoy. So I work closely with Sam on the ambassadors program, and then I am starting to jump into working with Anna and Sam, Sam, with Avocado Labs, because with everything that we do, there are just so many processes and procedures and steps to take to make things happen. And so my job is to make that easy for everyone on the team. And we moved places, but Tyler is still in the same place. So here you go.
Yeah, that's right. Perfect. Everything is backwards. So
I was rehearsing in my head, like which direction.
Me too. I was like quietly practicing down here just to make sure I knew which way to go. In the spirit of not repeating what everyone else has said, I'm thinking of something new that I can add. But I think the overall theme is because a DevRel position is there's so many things that can be done. Like my days and weeks really change depending on like what's happening. So right now I'm working a lot on YouTube content. So I've been working on like some demos and getting feedback on them. But there are times when I'm working on events like hackathons, and so most of my day is set up in meetings and emails, that kind of communication. So it really depends on what's happening that quarter, down to that month, down to that week. Lately, though, it's been video content, preparing some talks that I've been giving last week and then tomorrow. So it really changes depending on what's happening that week.
Okay, I think I'm left, so you have to throw it up.
Oh, I see. This way.
Yeah, wait. Got it. So yeah, basically the same as everyone else, but Avocado Loves is like my little baby too. So I work a lot on this, and I do reporting and organizing, looking for speakers, communicating with them, and yeah, it's a lot of organizational stuff. But I also love to give talks at conferences. Now that everything's virtual, it's a bit more difficult to like network with you all. But I'm really hoping that things will open up and we can all meet in person one day. Like, I haven't actually met anyone on my team except from Julien because I knew him from before the pandemic. Like, there's an after, hopefully.
Angular.
Yeah. Cool. So we've got another question, and then we've got a few questions actually. I don't think we're going to manage to answer all of them today, but if you want to reach out to us on Twitter, you can either reach out through Avocado Labs or personally. I think most of our DMs are open. But I'm going to pull up a few more questions, and then we've got Secret Santa, which I didn't mention before, but that's going to be fun. So stick around for that. And the next question is, did you all start out wanting to do DevRel, or did you find it to be a natural career progression after being a regular dev for a while? So I'm just going to jump in. And for me, while I was doing regular dev stuff, I was also very involved in the community. And I loved helping the community. I loved giving talks. And I realized at that moment that if that could be my job, like, not just doing it in my free time, then that would be awesome. And that's kind of what happened with me.
I think it's the same for me. I just started giving talks at local meetups about side projects and experiments that I did. But if you would have known me like 5-6 years ago and you would say to me that you're going to be a DevRel one day, nobody would have believed you because I was really shy. I would not be able to stand in front of people and talk to big audiences. So it's something that I just grew into, and it gradually got to where I am now, being a full-time employee DevRel.
I think a lot of people will find that it's hard to like stay away from a community. So when I was wait, who got it? Lights Christmas? Okay, we got to work on a better command.
Jingle bells would be better.
That was a pretty obscure one, James.
When I was in New York, I was on an engineering team, and some buddies and I just wanted to throw hackathons and have events and stuff. So it was doing that I even figured out developer relations was a thing, and kind of just backed into it that way. I think, if you're someone who codes but also enjoys, streaming on Twitch or doing stuff with the community outside of work, it's probably a pretty good fit for you, because if you already enjoy it, it'll be something that you can do a lot more of.
Yeah, I had no idea what DevRel was when I started coding and everything. Actually, fun fact, the way I got into DevRel was I was running the Angular Portland meetup, and Tara Miniksik, who was working for Telerik at the time. She was my pal from the Angular community, and she came and gave a talk. And when we were in the elevator riding up to the venue, she was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing DevRel?" And I was like, "I don't know what that is. Tell me what that is." And she was like, "That's what I do." And so we were chatting about it, and she told me to apply for a DevRel job at Telerik, and I never did. But but later, I met Kim Maida at a different conference, and she roped me into content and Auth0 and all that stuff. So so the reason I'm in DevRel is because of Tara Minixic. Not many people know that. Before she was super famous.
I got randomly lucky to get into DevRel. It was I didn't know anything about it. I was applying. I have a computer science degree, which I like randomly got into as well because they asked me what to study and I didn't know, so I said computer science, having no idea what it was. But I was applying for a job at Microsoft. Had an interview for a developer position, which I did not get. Then I had an interview with a TAM position, which I did not get. And they were like, "Yeah, you seem like maybe you'd be a good fit for this technical evangelist," which is what they called it, role. I was like, "I don't know what that is, but sounds good." And it seemed to like kind of fit I think they thought it fit my personality of like, again, wanting to be with people and teach. And so I got into it and really enjoyed it. I had no idea what it was beforehand. Then I did software development for 3 years, and I realized that I really miss doing, like I was creating content myself, but I really missed doing it full time. So the second time around, I intentionally was looking for DevRel roles and ended up at Auth0, which has almost been a year now in January. So like a couple weeks will be 1 year. It's pretty cool.
Woohoo.
So
Yeah, for me it was.
go.
Go ahead. Okay, I go. Yeah, I kind of got into. I went to school for business, and while I was going to school for business, I won't give you my whole story, but I ended up learning and teaching myself how to program. And through the whole process of starting as a junior dev and learning, I always wanted to go to conferences, and so I just volunteered randomly to speak at conferences as a developer. And I just spoke at conferences just because I liked meeting people and traveling and learning new topics and speaking. And then I also started teaching online courses, and so it was a natural path for me to move into DevRel. Even though I'd been working as a developer, I was doing a lot of DevRel-y things on the side, and so I wanted to move into that full time.
I guess I'm left. I kind of stumbled into working in developer relations. I also wasn't really aware of it being a thing. I have a bunch of developers in my family, but I wasn't aware of developer relations. I actually had to read a few articles about what it was because I was like, what is this? But it really drew my attention because just like everyone said, there's a lot of versatility. So from writing things, presenting, reaching out to community, making videos, it's a cool creative job. And I wanted to be part of that because it sounded like something that would keep my interest. I love doing things where there are just multiple things going on all the time. And with event planning that we do and all the, content we put out, it's a lot of the organizational pieces that are kind of right up my alley. So it fit into my skill set, even though I'm, developing is a foreign concept to me in a lot of ways.
Okay, so I'm gonna pull up the last question, and I'm literally just pulling these out in order, so it's no personal preference, I promise. And this one is, I have a similar question as one guy, so it's the last question we just answered. And is it possible to move into a dev role from a non-technical role? What do you all think?
I mean, so we just heard from Kristy, right? Kristy is going to be a developer when in a couple months. I can already tell you that because she's so good at streaming that we're just gonna teach her to code. But I do think developer relations is growing as a need for companies, and so there are opportunities to do program management, project management, and marketing within developer relations. Like, we need more people in developer relations who understand marketing. I think if you did a straw poll of everyone on this call, like, how comfortable do you feel doing marketing? Like, no one would raise their hand. So like, people who understand how to write a good email, how to manage like a database of users and communicate with developers, that's a growing need. So I think, put yourself out there and see what comes back. I think it's a great industry to start to learn.
There's also potential developer relations teams at companies that are not just focused at developers, right? Like, and
Yep.
I don't have a great example right offhand, but maybe something like Wix. Like, it's still in kind of the freelance development space, but it's not writing code. So as far as like, if you can already create content and you can organize communities and you can be connected in communities, you can bring that in, then you can learn, like, you could still learn programming also. But like, in a scenario like that, like, the curve to getting up to using Wix and teaching other people how to do it is a little bit quicker. So there are products and teams and companies out there that are not just focused at developers that still need people to interact with. Maybe you call them developers, maybe you don't, but people who are going to use that product in a certain way. And in that case, like Wix, it's still development. It's still creating websites. It's just a little bit different of an ecosystem.
Yeah, Webflow would be another good example of that. The whole no-code movement, there's basically DevRel, but for no-code products at this point.
Yeah.
Awesome. So like I mentioned before, if you do have questions, you can reach out to us on Avocado Labs on our Twitter account or personally.